Russian soldiers can take shelter in nearby structures if they are unable to receive logistical support in the area. After the battles, Ukraine targets and destroys any buildings that Russian forces could use as shelters. What could be the reason behind this strategy? Let's analyze it together. Stay tuned. March 17th, 2025. High-altitude fighter jets from the Airborne Brigade are conducting reconnaissance operations with the aim of destroying enemy bunkers in the region. These operations systematically target and destroy all bunkers and any structures that are either used or potentially usable. Ukraine's strategic move in targeting these structures stands out as a critical step that could change the course of the war. Every structure that could be used by Russian forces as a shelter is targeted, as these structures are crucial for defense and logistics. The destruction of bunkers significantly limits the Russian army's mobility in the area and leaves them vulnerable. This strategy prevents Russian forces from repositioning and reinforcing their defensive positions, providing Ukraine with a better opportunity for a successful attack. Particularly in areas near the front lines, civil structures, abandoned buildings, old factories, and underground facilities that could shelter Russian soldiers are targeted. Ukraine's approach is seen as a critical measure to prevent Russian forces from establishing long-term positions and accumulating strength. When Russian soldiers are unable to find shelter, they deteriorate more quickly under harsh weather conditions or Ukrainian pressures, making it harder for them to maintain their defensive positions. Additionally, this move greatly restricts Russian forces' covert movements and surprise attack attempts. Without shelters, Russian soldiers are forced to move in more open areas, making them easier targets for Ukrainian drones and artillery systems. This increases Ukraine's chances of success in military operations. Another important aspect of this strategy is its psychological impact. Seeing their safe areas constantly destroyed, Russian soldiers suffer both moral and operational losses. Constantly being on the move, they feel war fatigue more rapidly and lose motivation to fight. This weakens the overall combat capacity of the Russian army. With this move, Ukraine is not only gaining an immediate military advantage, but also attempting to shape the long-term course of the war. Pressuring Russian forces, disrupting their logistical support, and slowing their advance are critical steps toward Ukraine's ultimate victory. March 22, 2025. Ukrainian forces using unmanned aerial vehicles detect a Russian infantry unit in a village. After observing the unit for a while, they notice that the soldiers enter a shelter within the village. Ukrainian forces decide to target the shelter and direct an FPV drone to it. The FPV drone directly enters the shelter and conducts its attack. The explosion completely destroys the shelter, and the Russian soldiers inside are killed. This operation showcases Ukraine's effective use of drone technology in detecting and eliminating enemy troops. Such attacks, targeting vulnerable and unprotected enemy units in exposed areas, severely weaken the enemy's defensive capabilities and strengthen Ukraine's position on the battlefield. March 23, 2025. The 414 Obrubas Taki Magyar unit has achieved significant success in the Donetsk region recently, neutralizing numerous Russian units. In the first footage, the Ukrainian operator approaches a Russian shelter with a drone. But the drone gets caught on a net at the entrance, causing it to fall without detonating. Meanwhile, the Russian infantry inside the bunker peeks out from behind the cover to assess the situation. Initially, the Russian soldier observes the drone cautiously, but eventually decides to approach it. This action puts him in great danger, and the drone's explosion ultimately destroys both the soldier and the shelter. In another video, the Ukrainian operator detects a Russian soldier hiding inside a container. When the Russian soldier notices the drone approaching, he attempts to flee quickly. However, escaping proves impossible, and after the explosion, the Russian infantryman is killed. This situation highlights how inadequate shelter options in the area make these locations the first choice for Russian soldiers seeking cover. However, these sites are not only critical for Russian soldiers, but also vital for Ukrainian operators. During reconnaissance operations, such locations are prioritized for investigation because enemy hideouts can be high-risk strategic targets. Ukrainian forces are systematically neutralizing numerous Russian armored vehicles identified in the area. Using FPV drones, Ukraine has managed to disable even the most powerful Russian military vehicles. Tanks, particularly the T-72, T-80, and T-90 models, are primary targets for drone operators. Critical points such as the rear of tank turrets, engine compartments, the upper surfaces where the armor is weakest, and the open hatches of armored personnel carriers are targeted for attacks. Recently, the Ukrainian army has been successful in ambushing Russian convoys with FPV drones, neutralizing multiple vehicles at once. New generation FPV drones equipped with thermal cameras and AI-assisted targeting systems have become a nightmare for Russian occupying forces. FPV drones have become one of the most important components of Ukraine's defense against Russia. Thanks to innovative tactics and continuously evolving drone technology, Ukraine is halting the advance of occupying forces and gaining superiority on the front lines. March 24, 2025. In the following video, we will witness a violent explosion captured by a Russian soldier's helmet camera. At the beginning of the video, a group of Russian soldiers is seen calmly advancing across the terrain, with a report stating that they are carrying Ukrainian ammunition. However, the exact nature of this ammunition is not clearly shown in the footage. As the soldier filming turns around to look at his comrades, a sudden and violent explosion occurs. The blast causes the group of Russian soldiers to scatter, spreading across the terrain in a vulnerable position. After the explosion, the soldier filming experiences a brief moment of shock. Initially unresponsive, the soldier quickly recovers and rushes to help his comrades. After administering first aid to one of them, he attempts to find a radio. Other Russian soldiers writhing in pain on the ground are unable to respond in any way. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the soldier finds the radio and calls for urgent assistance. In the remainder of the video, we are unable to determine the fate of the Russian soldiers. However, it is clear that several soldiers lost their lives and others are severely injured. It is estimated that these soldiers likely waited for hours in the area for help to arrive, doing their best to survive until assistance reached them. March 23, 2025. The 4th Freedom Force Battalion of the National Guard Rubij, 4th Brigade continues its reconnaissance operations and detects 2 Russian soldiers. Ukrainian forces begin to track these soldiers with unmanned aerial vehicles, monitoring their positions for an extended period. After this surveillance, Ukrainian forces launch an attack to neutralize the detected soldiers. First, the Russian soldier at the rear is targeted and struck. After this attack, the other Russian soldier attempts to defend himself by hiding behind a tree. However, he does not notice multiple FPV drones in the air at that moment. While the Russian soldier carefully scans his surroundings, another Ukrainian FPV drone suddenly approaches and strikes the target. The blast causes severe injury to the Russian soldier, who is in shock, and shortly after he draws his weapon and takes his own life. This event once again highlights the devastating and ruthless nature of war, as well as how Ukrainian forces have successfully conducted operations by effectively using drone technology to target their objectives. March 24th, 2025. Day by day, unexpected and interesting events continue to unfold on the battlefield. Often, many small moments and strategic moves that shape the reality of war happen out of our view. In this video, a Ukrainian soldier faces off against 2 Russian soldiers, and a conflict ensues. Initially, the Ukrainian soldier neutralizes 1 Russian soldier, but the confrontation with the second soldier continues. The Ukrainian soldier makes a tactical move by closing the distance with the enemy soldier and throwing his helmet. This action causes the Russian soldier to misinterpret the move, thinking it is a bomb attack. The Russian soldier, thinking the helmet is an explosive device, quickly starts to flee, but this causes him to leave his cover and become an easy target. The Ukrainian soldier seizes this opportunity perfectly, The fleeing Russian soldier, now unprotected behind his cover, is easily targeted by the Ukrainian soldier, who ends the soldier's life. This event highlights a skillful and intelligent move. The Ukrainian soldier's quick thinking and strategic mind allow him to be the victor in this conflict. These moments show the complexity of war and how soldiers can come up with creative solutions to survive. March 24, 2025. The 93rd Mechanized Brigade and the 2nd Mechanized Battalion continue their reconnaissance operations in the region and detect a Russian soldier in a trench. Ukrainian forces decide to monitor this soldier for a while as they believe his movements might provide more useful information. The Russian infantryman, using the secure area he found, prepares a place to lie down while Ukrainian forces continue observing him. After some time, Ukrainian forces decide to launch an attack and drop a bomb on the Russian soldier. The explosion injures the Russian soldier, leaving him in a severely vulnerable position. However, Ukrainian forces want to ensure the attack is completed, so they send another FPV drone for further assurance. The drone is directed at the Russian soldier, and the explosion from the drone completely neutralizes him. As a result, the Russian soldier dies after these two attacks. This operation demonstrates how effectively Ukrainian forces are using drone technology and strategic planning to neutralize their targets. March 22, 2025. RUB-PAK units border guards during their reconnaissance and operations toward Kramatorsk detect Russian troops. As the Russian soldiers move with various vehicles to secure logistics, they are targeted by FPV drones and become victims of the strikes. These drones effectively block the movement of Russian forces and destroy several vehicles. On the flat terrain of the region, Russian infantry marching on foot are extremely vulnerable. Since they are in the open, they are easily targeted by Ukrainian operators. Targeting enemy infantry stands out as a direct and effective attack strategy for Ukrainian forces. As a result of these attacks, the Russian forces suffer a significant blow and are neutralized. March 25, 2025. The Russian armed forces attempt to infiltrate small infantry units into the border regions of Sumy Oblast. The effort to insert small infantry groups into the front lines stems from desperation, as Russia struggles to break through Ukraine's defensive lines. The Ukrainian army, with its strong defenses and superior reconnaissance capabilities, consistently halts Russia's advance. After suffering heavy losses in large-scale attacks, Russia now attempts to wear down Ukrainian defenses by sending small groups forward in secret. These small Russian units, however, often fail to return and are neutralized by Ukrainian forces. Thanks to Ukraine's advanced surveillance systems, UAVs, and reconnaissance teams, these units are detected early on. Additionally, Russian forces usually advance without sufficient logistics or support. Even if they manage to infiltrate behind Ukrainian lines, they get trapped and are unable to retreat. Ukraine's strong defensive lines prevent their progress, and many of these units fall into ambushes or become targets for artillery fire. Communication issues further hinder the success of these small groups. Ukraine disrupts Russian radio signals, making it difficult for the soldiers to communicate with each other. This complicates their ability to receive withdrawal orders. As a result, these small Russian units frequently run into Ukrainian defenses and suffer heavy casualties. Most infiltration attempts end in failure, with many Russian soldiers either killed or captured. March 19, 2025. The Aerobomber, a UA aerial reconnaissance group, part of the 30th Separate Mechanized Brigade, detected a lone Russian soldier during a routine reconnaissance flight in the area. Soldiers who are often found alone on the front lines like this are typically those who have survived a conflict or attack, manage to hide and stay alive, but cannot return to their unit due to logistical and communication issues in the area. These soldiers are both mentally and physically exhausted, making them vulnerable on the battlefield. Upon detecting the Russian soldier, a bomb is dropped from the air by a Ukrainian drone operator. Following the explosion, the soldier is severely wounded and collapses to the ground, motionless. However, the operation doesn't end there. Shortly after, a second bomb is dropped to completely neutralize the target. This second strike not only worsens the soldier's condition but also causes the ammunition he was carrying to explode. The explosion ignites the ammunition, causing it to catch fire and burn rapidly. After these attacks, the Russian soldier loses his life at the scene. The Aerobomber UA team records footage of the operation, reports the situation, and confirms the success of the mission. March 19, 2025. Warriors of the Ground Defense Brigade detect a Russian infantry unit advancing towards Zaporizhzhia. The sparse vegetation in the area causes enemy forces to move across completely open terrain without any natural cover. This situation leaves the Russian soldiers vulnerable, making them easy targets. Ukrainian forces take advantage of this and immediately launch an attack. The Russian infantry unit, under intense fire, quickly becomes disorganized after the first strike. During the conflict, many soldiers remain motionless, unsure of what to do, and the lack of a place to take cover further exacerbates their helplessness. Ukrainian forces carry out successive attacks, completely destroying the enemy unit. As a result of the battle, the Russian infantry unit is completely neutralized, and the Ukrainian forces confirm the success of the operation while maintaining their dominance in the area.